Hi, and welcome to the Phins podcast, the podcast that gets you closer to the game than the sheds. I'm Mitch, and if you bleed red, white, and gold, you're in the right place. Every week, right off the back of the game day, we're breaking down everything Dolphins, what clicked, what didn't, and everything in between. No fluff, no filter, just real talk about our boys from Ready. So whether you caught the game live, watched it back, or you're relying on us to tell you what happened, strap in, because we're fanatics here. This is Fins Up. Let's get into it. Well, the winning streak comes to an end in a wet, cold, and windy Newcastle afternoon. I didn't get to watch this game live. I had some things on this afternoon, but I did watch it back after getting home. And yeah, it was a bit of a rough game. You know, you could probably excuse some of the gameplay today from the Dolphins on being, 8 men down, missing our lots of Origin players. And this is what's unfortunate about the Origin period is the good teams that are having a good run into the finals, they always seem to struggle around this time of the year. The Broncos have always been that team where they have so many people representing their squad. And they lose so many players to Origin where they have, between 6 and 10 players out most years. And this year, obviously, the Broncos aren't playing as well and they don't have as many out. But the team that has been playing well from Queensland has been the Dolphins. So it's no surprise that this week, being that we have so many people out and we're playing a very decent team who also has a couple of players out, but not as many as the Dolphins do. There's also the injury side of things. We have our prime halfback, Isaiah Katoa, out with a broken wrist after last week's phenomenal game against the Warriors. So this game doesn't really go our way. Unfortunately, the winning streak comes to an end. It was a very close game in the end. The first half was close in terms of the possession and in terms of the ball carrying and ball possession. The error count as well in the first half was quite similar. However, we looked like we lacked any kind of execution or structure to our plays. So I've got a quick, step-by-step breakdown of the first and second half. So I'm just going to get straight into this. The 4-minute mark, and this is a consistent thing that I've seen over the last, probably 6 to 8 months with Herbie. The players seem to just have free reign in laying all over Herbie. Herbie's making an attempt to stand up, and people who, aren't in favour of the Dolphins are probably saying, well, he's milking the penalty. But every single bloody week, they're laying all over Herbie, and he never gets a set restart called in his favour. He's just always said that he's just milking it. The referee always calls them out. So 4 minutes in, laying all over Herbie, no set restart. First 5 minutes of the game is a decent arm wrestle, no points are scored. The Knights clearly have the better set distance. It very much seems like even though the Dolphins had the wind at their back, it was a very windy and cold and wet day at the Newcastle Stadium. But the Knights just seem to be able to kick the ball further, even though they have the wind against them. And this is something execution-wise, Bradley Schneider just doesn't seem to be able to kick very well. And this game showclasses that very, very obviously. Yeah, it's a good arm wrestle, but the Knights are making better set distances. 6 minutes in, Nafahu gets hit in the head. No penalty, no call, nothing there. A minute and a half later, so 7.5 minutes into the game, another head high on Nafahu, and there's no call. Then it's 9 minutes, our first set in the Newcastle half, and nothing really comes of it. 11 minutes in, there's no set restart on Connolly Lemuelu. They're laying all over him, nothing called. 12.5 minutes in, there's a double effort, tray coming out of our own half. They push him back down onto the ground, and no call. 14 minutes in, terrible fifth kick from from Schneider. Sorry, Hunt caught it on his 20. So we're kicking from probably our 50, our 40 meter mark, and we're only kicking it about 30 to 40 meters. Like it blows my mind that with the wind at your back and you're only kicking that far, like you need to be turning the ball over basically on their try line. Like the kick needs to go downfield that far. I know it's a fine line between kicking too far and it dribbling over their dead end goal, but you can't be kicking it only 30 or 40 meters so they're catching it on their 20. It's just not good enough. So there's no real excuse there. It's Schneider needs to really step his game up while Katoa is out, and you can probably hear the the heat in my voice here. But this is frustrating because we're now at the crucial part of the season. Origin, you've got plenty of teams right now getting the free 2 points from the buys. We're going up against teams that we really need to win against if we want to cement ourselves in the top 8 for the rest of the year. Last week, we put ourselves in the top 4. This week, we've now let ourselves out. So, terrible fifth tackle kick. And then terrible defense. Kafusi comes out of the line instead of keeping the line. Jeremy Marshall-King can't get across to cover the gap. The Knights go in for their try. So then, a couple of minutes later, Frizzell drops the ball. We really need to take advantage of having possession in the Knights' half, and we just don't. The left side attack is not clicking. Nafahu on the wing, he's not getting the ball in the right position that he needs to be, and it seems to be this lack of ball play from Schneider to Nicarima to Herbie or to Trey Fuller to then Nafahu. There just seems to be no connection there. The Knights are offside from their fifth kick a couple of minutes later. There's literally, they go up for a contest, and for whatever reason, we don't want to contest the ball for fifth tackle kicks when it's an attacking kick against us. And the Knights go up, they catch it, they pass it back, and then they put in another kick, and Dylan Brown's clearly offside. But I don't know what the refs are looking at, but they're clearly not looking at the players and their offside positions because there's no call there. We then spread the ball, and Nafahu makes a break down the sideline. I think this is the second tackle. And he probably gets to about the 40-meter mark in our own half, and he puts in a little chip kick over the top, but it goes out on the full. It's not needed. We don't need to try. We're too rushed here. And Nafahu, he's a young kid, so you can put it down to lack of experience and whatnot, but for those moments, he really needs to step in field and just take the tackle, play the ball quick, let Herbie come for a dummy half scoot off the back of that. We can make a quick another 10 meters and we play the ball in their 40. That's all we need to do. So a couple of these moments here, we just don't ice. Back forth, couple of more sets. A fifth tackle kick from the Knights goes down. Nafahu jumps up. Dominic Young actually hits Nafahu in the head coming in for the ball. It's a very clear penalty, but again, no call from the referees. They're not watching. The touch judges aren't looking at anything else other than whether it's a fair contest. But I would say that it's not a fair contest because Dominic Young has gone up and he's played at Nafahu rather than playing at the ball. He disguises it very well, and this is what we're going to get when they've made this different interpretation with the whole going up and competing for that ball. So yeah, no call there. 24 minutes in, Knights get a 6 again, and it seems like the players so far, hasn't been raining heavily at this point, just a few drops here and there, but it's windy. The players seem to be slipping over a fair bit, but it doesn't look like a very slippery field. So then we get the ball back, 26 minutes in. We're not kicking deep enough again. Schneider kicks straight to the Knights on their 20, and we have 0 kick chase. So they're playing the ball on their 30-meter mark for their first tackle. It goes down, the Knights put in their kick, 27 minutes in. They're laying all over Trey Fuller. No call again. Another end of the set, terrible kick from Schneider. And then we get the ball back a couple of minutes later. Schneider's doing a back line, and he throws the ball into Lemuelu's back, and we turn over possession. 31 minutes in, Maju has no attempt to play the ball. This is actually multiple times now, and the commentators even pointed out that you could essentially put a bet on Marju not playing the ball, and you would get a payback every single time. Yeah, it essentially the ball gets hit out by the Knights, travels towards the Dolphins' goal line. Um, it's called a knock on against the Dolphins. So Knights get the ball back. The Knights put in a kick. Trey gets the ball stripped. Luckily, Dylan Lucas knocks the ball on over the try line. Very lucky not to have a try scored there. A couple of minutes later, we go downfield, and again, this is essentially the summary of the first half. We put in these fifth tackle kicks. They're not deep enough. There's no kick chase, and it's essentially just no one doing anything. Knights come down our end, and they have great sets. They're making a solid 40, 50 meters every single time, but their kicks are basically they're executing their kicks. But Knights get down our end. They do a backline play out to our right. Averillo gets caught in no man's land. Schneider can't cover the hole, and Knights go over for their second try. 38 minutes, so a couple of minutes later, Herbie's trying to get the boys, waking them up, but no one's rallying. Everyone's looking lazy. It looks like they just want to get into halftime. We have 4 tackles in their half and just nothing, and then a terrible fifth tackle kick. And there's 6 seconds remaining in the second half. We pack a scrum. Schneider decides to do a chip kick over the top, and no one knows that the player's on, even though we have a great deep back line on the far left, and Nafahu is essentially waiting for the ball. Schneider just decides that, let's just kick the ball over the top, and Fletcher Sharp's right there. Like, the Knights players had it covered. It's not the kind of play. Like, unless you have someone that's a towering, second rower or winger coming in to catch that, like if Bostock swings out to the left, obviously Bostock in Origin camp, but if you have a tall person, you need to, sum that play up and actually put it correctly. But for one, it's not high enough. For two, it's too deep. So even if we were competing for it, it's a terrible spot to even catch the ball because you probably get tackled and go dead. This was the whole first half. Schneider really costing the Dolphins the field possession battle and the backline sets. Just terrible execution, terrible fifth tackle options, and just not able to kick the ball deep enough. Second half comes out. We kicking off. It's a shallow kickoff for some reason. The Knights catch it on their 20 meter instead of in their own goal. So they're playing the ball on like their 30 meter line. 2 minutes in, there's a strip from Herbie, but we can't get the possession back. So Knights get it. There's 3.5 minutes in. Jerry Marshall King throws a forward pass. We turn the possession over to the Knights far too easily. A couple of minutes later, it goes by. Schneider seems to, being completely outclassed by the fifth tackle kicks by the Knights. Great kick the Knights put in down to essentially within 5 meters of our try line. We have to pick it up and run. There's now a point here where it's scrum feed, and the ball kind of gets trapped in the scrum. The ref waves it away and calls break. But then once the Dolphins make a tackle, the Knights are called for the Dolphins being offside. The ref decides that even though he called break and he's the one who called that the scrum can break, he then calls the players from the scrum that they broke too early and they were offside. And this happens again later on in the game, and you can hear the Dolphins, they're arguing with the ref, like, you called break. So how can you call us for a penalty from the scrum if you called break? And he goes, well, I'm going to call break every time. So we'll get to that later. But it's just showing where these little battles aren't able to be won when, the ref's calling break. There's decisions in this game that the ref doesn't make, but does in favour of the Knights. And it actually costs us a fair bit of possession as well as other problems that we're having. But, it's to be expected with this many players out. And the boys did make it a close contest in the end. But, we continue. 9 minutes in to the second half, Trey knocks it on. Completion in the second half so far has not been that great. We've been knocking the ball on, throwing forward passes. 10 minutes in, we strip the ball, Dolphins ball. At the end of the set, surprisingly, when Avarillo passes the ball, Osako scores. So we make it downfield after a strip, I think from Herbie, or it might have been our host plus boys Sewer. So we get the ball back and we actually do a back line out to our right, and Avarillo draws and passes. And so far, Avarillo, when he's been running the ball, there hasn't looked like he's going to pass out to Osako at all. This time he does, and we score. So we need to do this more in the second half if we're going to get back into this contest. 13 minutes in, Herbie and Sharp, they're going up for the contest. It looks like the ball touches Sharp first and it actually goes forward, which would class it as a knock-on against the Knights. However, they don't bother calling this at all, and instead they just say it's a clear take by Herbie, but it clearly touches Sharp. So Herbie, this is probably from the 10-meter line. Herbie then runs towards the try line, has two defenders on him. He grounds it short, and it's called a knock-on. However, majority of the other calls from the bunkers would say that that was a knock-on against Sharp. So there's the first infringement, and it would get taken back to that. But not for the Dolphins. So 15 minutes in, again, Knights laying all over Gilbert. The fifth tackle comes off the Knights, and there's no 6 again here. So we get double duped in this. You have players from the Knights laying all over Gilbert and it's really slow to get up and play the ball. No call. The Dolphins players are asking why is we not getting a set restart? Then we put in a kick. It comes off, I think, Fletcher Hunt's arm or Fletcher Sharp's arm, and it goes forward, and then we pass it all the way out to the left, and no 6 again is called. It very clearly comes off the Knights player. So the ref calls that, we eventually, the tackled on the fifth tackle. We have to challenge it. So we have to do the referee's job. And eventually the bunker shows exactly what everyone else in the bloody world watching this game had seen, which is it came off the Knights player. So I don't understand how a referee that is supposed to see pretty much everything in the game, and you can make an argument that refs aren't perfect, but something that was as clear, obvious as day, and you have touch judges that are supposed to be looking at where the ball is hitting and where it's going. So the touch judge needs to make that call. You have at least there 2 minimum people looking at the same play, and neither of them saw what everyone else saw. So it took the Dolphins having to challenge it and get the ball back that way. 15 and a half minutes in to the second half, and we have the same thing. The Knights players laying all over Herbie, and there's no problems. We end up making a backline play out to the right. Trey kind of makes a half break. It's the fifth tackle. He puts it slightly on his foot, and it's just a bit too heavy. So the Knights now get a 7 tackle set. They march it all the way down our end of the field, and Nafahu comes up with a great try-saving tackle, and it's actually very lucky that the Knights don't get a try here by them knocking it on. So then, we play the ball, we make some good meters. Kurt Donahue comes up with a beautiful pass. He sets Avarillo up into a gap. It's a great, it's a cutout pass of, I think, Schneider, actually. It goes just straight past Schneider and goes straight to Avarillo. Avarillo does a step inside and makes a great break, and Donahue supports his own pass back up on the inside from Avarillo, and then great try. Shows how important that Donahue will be to this team coming into the finals as we make a run for that. So Osako converts this one. Great moment here. 21 minutes in, it's a better kick from Schneider. It's right down into their corner. The Knights returning it on their 10 instead of their 20. So they take their fifth tackle kick in their own half. And at this point, with essentially 20 minutes left in the game, the rain starts coming down real hard. A couple of minutes later, Schneider has a very average fifth tackle kick again, but the Knights throw a forward pass and we get possession in their second half. Then a couple of minutes later, Kurt Donahue throws a forward pass. In these moments where we're on top, we really need to be disciplined and we can't be giving away these very easy turnovers of possession. So we need to fix that as we're continuing the rest of this season. 25 minutes in, this is where the other scrum happens. The ref calls break again, and he calls an offside penalty and broke too early. And his excuse was, I'm always going to call break. Like, that is just ridiculous reasoning for giving a penalty to one particular team. You are the referee. You decide when the scrum should break or not. So by you calling break, you cannot then call a penalty for the players breaking early from the scrum and being offside. So where is the reasoning here and where is the accountability for this referee? Because at this point, this is now 2 errors this referee has made, along with the other particular calls where he's just missed things. But this is actually just the start. It gets way worse later in the final 10 minutes in this game. Because, we're getting into now 15 minutes remaining and a very, clear call that gets the Knights out of their own end into a try scoring position down our end. Thankfully, we have some decent defense in this second half. We don't let tries in. And a minute later after this, Herbie makes a great break down the field. Again, the Knights players, like Herbie just makes a good 30, 40 meter break, and the Knights slow the ball down. Probably enough that it would have been a professional foul. At least, 4 or 5 weeks ago against the Hammer, it was a professional foul. But here, no, it seems to be completely fine. You're allowed to lay on players when they're trying to when they've just made a break and, their defending team is not all on side. At this particular point, this is a professional foul. You cannot lay on a player that has just made a break for your team to then get on side. So someone should have been sin binned here, and it's ridiculous that this kind of level of game that we're at, this is first grade, and you have these referees that have no understanding of the rules, and this whole weekend has actually been disgusting by the NRL in the bunker. There's been plenty of calls that are just, they make no sense. You have this several $1 million, I can't even remember what the number is, but it's several millions of dollars of a facility with, multiple screens and different angles and whatnot. And there's particular areas of this game where there's just calls that go completely unmissed, and you have players, just some particular teams getting favoured over another. So, and just a bit of a side tangent here. What I'm referring to here regarding the bunker is it was the Knights, sorry, not the Knights, the South Sydney Rabbitohs and the Penrith Panthers game. Like, Tom Jenkins is a fantastic player. However, I do not know how his second try, was called a try and not pulled up for double movement. So, to the letter of the law, double movement. But I digress. Herbie makes a great set. We get a set restart in this, and we're followed by then a high tackle on Connolly Lemuelu, and it's essentially a kick in front to level the score. This is now about 14, 15 minutes left in the game. It's a bit more arm wrestle for the next 5 minutes. At 30 minutes into the second half, there's a great kick chase, but there's no contest in the air. And as soon as, I think it's Fletcher Hunt catches the ball, as soon as he lands, we don't even tackle him. So then, 2-3 tackles later, the Knights put in a 40-20 and it goes down to our end and they get the ball back. We're now in the final 10 minutes and there's just, the guys seem to be getting tired. There's some really sloppy, execution here again. And that's been the story of this whole game. Just execution has been way off. Turning over the ball too easily, forward passes. Yeah. ridiculous. 32 minutes, great scramble defense, forces Marju over the sideline. However, now we have to play the ball on our 10 meters. And yeah, it's a hard set. We probably make about 30 meters in this set. We kick it down their end. The Knights then have a great set. They put in an attacking kick. Nafahu gets hit in midair by Dom Young again. Dom Young clearly playing at Nafahu instead of at the ball. And again, it's one of these situations where it looks like Dom Young has only eyes for the ball. But he literally comes through, hits Nafahu with his arm as Nafahu's trying to catch the ball. This is clearly a disruptor. Like, there's nothing more textbook than this. He's gone up. He hasn't made an attempt to catch the ball. He's actually hit Nafahu, which has forced Nafahu not to have a genuine contest and take the ball. So we knock it on. Then, yeah, the Knights have possession 10 minutes from our line, and yeah, they kick a field goal. They waste basically 2 or 3 tackles, and they kick a field goal 10 meters out. So this is now 5 minutes to go, and yeah, they kick the field goal, and you see, you can feel that the Knights feel like they have done enough here. But then comes the controversial didn't go 10 meters from the kickoff call. We have Jermaine Osako kicks the ball, very clearly passes the 10-meter line, but we seem to be in the Flintstones of technology era where, we can have, literally, the commentators said this, we could put a man on the moon in the 60s, but we can't figure out if a ball passed the 10-meter line. It literally, I don't understand how crystal clear it was. Like, it was so obvious. The Dolphins player was past 10 meters and jumped, and where he hit it with his hands was still on over the 10-meter line. Like, it's just that. Then the bunker just goes, nah, it didn't pass the 10-meter plane, so therefore, nah, all good. So yeah, just another referee interference there, and all the comments that I've seen. Once I was waiting to get home, and I was trying to catch up with what was going on. So many people were saying that the Dolphins were not allowed to have a fair crack at being able to level this game or even go in front, because the refs and the bunker decided that ball didn't go 10 meters when it clearly did. And yeah, you've got all this technology in the bunker, and they can't even put a virtual line on each 10-meter mark that would determine whether it went 10 meters. Like, it's actually just ridiculous at this point. How does it cost so much money for this facility to operate and run if you can't even make the most simplest calls? Like, majority of people, unless you're a Knights fan, majority of people saw that ball went 10 meters. So yeah, we then, get the ball back a couple of minutes later, and we just have an awful final set for our possession. We throw the ball around, we go like 15 meters backwards, and yeah, we got into a position where we could have had a shot at, a 2-point field goal to go in front, or even, a 1-point field goal and level it up. But yeah, we throw the ball around, and again, just poor execution. The Knights get it basically with, a minute and a half left. They put the kick down. Actually, they don't put the kick down. They have, a final crack at our line, and they turn the ball over essentially on our 10-meter line or somewhere near there. And yeah, we come out and we play the ball, and yeah, Kurt Donahue tries to put a kick in and just misses it. And yeah, that's it. There's our 8-winning streak over, and we're now out of the top 4. We slipped down to 6th, and the top end of this ladder is starting to get very crowded. So yeah, we need to be better next week against the Sharks at Kayo, and I fear for our record at Kayo, because last time we played there, we played Manly and we got flogged. So next week, it's a battle essentially nearly to stay in the 8, because you have some teams next week that if they win and we don't, they're a real threat at pushing us out of the top 8. So, you have Manly, who are on 22 points. You have the Sharks on 24. So we're in the position of battling for the 5th or 6th spot for that particular one. However, if Manly win their game, they will leapfrog us if we lose. So we could drop easily to 7th. If the Rabbitohs win theirs, they will go into 8th. Cowboys can potentially win and they will stay in 9th. But we could potentially sit if we lose and some of the other teams around us win. We could potentially be sitting in 8th position, which will be a very similar outcome to around this time last year. And we've had this run go on, but we can't afford to give up now. So yeah, as much as we had it against us this particular game, and it was a very hard game with our players out, we need to be better next week. I'll personally be at Kayo on Saturday, so I'm hoping for a good game. I'm hoping that some of the boys will back up from Origin, given that they'll have roughly 4-day turnaround. But yeah, we need to start winning again. We can't afford to break that streak and then go on a losing streak at this end of the season. So yeah. Well, until next time, hopefully after next Saturday, I'm here with an update for you guys that we've won. And yeah, let's cheer the boys home. Hopefully we can get the job done next week. And that's a wrap on another episode of Phins Up. If you enjoyed the breakdown, do us a favour and hit subscribe. Drop us a review and share it with a fellow Dolphins fan. It genuinely helps more than you'd think. Do you have a hot take? Do you think we got it wrong? Discuss with us on our social media page at Phins Up Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. We'll be back after the next game with a full breakdown, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Until then, stay loud, stay proud, and keep those fins up.